So I'm just going to be recording this. So hang tight with me. All right, and we'll get going. Hello, everybody. Hello. So good to see all of you on. The live isn't working. I'm live on Instagram, and I'm live, I think, all over the internet. God knows where I'm live on the internet. Welcome if you're in the membership. I'm just fumbling around here. Can you all hear me? Okay. So we're talking today about the ways in which we repress our own needs to take care of our parents as a child. So again, just to review, we are reviewing the drama of the gifted child, and then if you're in the membership, we will finish with a practice in the membership. Okay. So remember that we talked yesterday about the undercoupling, or the kind of disconnection that happens between our early life experiences and our memory. So we'll forget certain things happened and certain feelings were there in order to survive our childhood, essentially. So that was kind of a recap yesterday. So I'll continue on. This is by Alice Miller. However paradoxical this may seem, a child is at the mother's disposal. The mother can feel herself the center of attention, for her child's eyes follow her everywhere, right? And if you're a parent, you know this. A child cannot run away from her as her own mother once did. A child can be brought up so that it becomes what she wants it to be. A child can be made to show respect. She can impose her own feelings on him. She see herself mirrored in his love and admiration, feel strong in his presence. This idea of respect is an interesting one, right? Because I think, and tell me how many of you relate to this, which is this idea that like a lot of us don't grow up knowing what respect even means. We don't know. And it's doesn't even, because we're not experiencing respect toward being shown towards us as children, which is often the case with narcissistic and emotionally immature parents, is they're not respecting their child, and so the child doesn't even learn what that means. And I'm curious, if there are other experiences that you sort of learned as an adult what they were because you didn't experience them growing up. Just put them below. So she can see herself mirrored in his love and admiration and feel strong in his presence. But when he becomes too much, she can abandon that child to a stranger or to solitary confinement in another room. When a woman has had to repress all these needs in relation to her own mother, they will arise from the depths of her unconscious and seek gratification through her own child, however well educated she may be. The child feels this clearly and very soon forgoes the expression of his own distress, right? Here's the beginning of self-abandonment. And if you've taken any of my groups, if you've gone through literally anything with me, membership, groups, anything, we talk a lot about this, which is that fundamental early moment of self-abandonment. And in order to maintain the attachment relationship. So later, when these feelings of being deserted begin to emerge in the therapy of the adult, they are accompanied by intense pain and despair. It is clear that these people could not have survived so much pain as children. And that's right? We don't have the nervous system capacity to deal with the feelings that we're having unless somebody helps us deal with them. It goes back to that idea of, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? It's the same thing with the child. We don't really exist except in the mirroring that we receive from a caregiver, right? So depending on that caregiver's ability to mirror us, to be okay and enough for us, will really determine how much of a sense of self we build. Okay, so it is clear that these people could not have survived so much pain as children. That would have been possible only in an empathic, attentive environment, which was lacking. Thus, all feelings had to be warded off. But to say that they were quote unquote absent would be a denial of the empirical evidence. And again, this is something I've been talking about a lot this week, and in light of the Oprah conversation on estrangement, which was interesting to say the least. But this idea that people are saying, well, when you look at your childhood, when you look at and acknowledge your trauma, you're playing the victim, or to say, oh, I had a really nice childhood, but I don't really have a lot of memories of my childhood. That's not a good sign. If you don't have a lot of memories of your childhood, something was wrong. And we know that from the neurobiological research, which is to say that you should start to be developing autobiographical memory around age 5, 6. And a lot of people with complex trauma don't do that because they have very high rates of dissociation. But then they say they feel fine, or they didn't have a lot of feelings. They don't feel a lot of things now. And so this is all, pointing towards complex trauma. Several mechanisms can be recognized in the defense against early feelings of abandonment. In addition to simple denial, we usually find the exhausting struggle to fulfill the old, repressed, and by now, I don't know if you guys can hear that. Can you guys hear my window? I have a window that's kind of broken. I hope it's not too loud. Let me know. I'm waiting for it to get fixed. The wind is really intense. Okay. So in addition to simple denial, we usually find the exhausting struggle to fulfill the old, repressed, and by now often perverted needs with the help of symbols, cults, sexual perversions, groups of all kinds, alcohol, or drugs. Intellectualization is very commonly encountered as well, since it's a defense mechanism of great power. Okay. So she's talking about these defense mechanisms that show up as those early needs get split off and we disconnect from them, we forget about them, and then we develop behaviors that are an attempt to make us feel okay, but all of that stuff is still stuck in our bodies and in our nervous systems and in our implicit memory, which is the memory that's like riding a bike. Okay. It's not in your intellectual mind. So then she says intellectualization is a really great defense mechanism that people use. It can have disastrous results, however, when the mind ignores the vital messages of the body. All these defense mechanisms are accompanied by repression of the original situation and the emotions belonging to it. Yeah? Is this making sense? Okay, you can always put questions in the comments. All right. So accommodation to parental needs often, but not always, leads to the as-if personality, she calls it. This person develops in such a way that he reveals only what is expected of him and fuses so completely with what he reveals that one could scarcely guess how much more there is to him behind this false self. I'm on page 12 in the book. It might be different on Kindle. He cannot develop and differentiate his true self because he is unable to live it. Okay, this is about embodiment. This is about, you can't really be present in your life without being connected to your body. It's not possible because it's literally you're in the wrong part of your brain to be present. Okay. So understandably, this person will complain of a sense of emptiness, futility, and homelessness. So kind of like feeling like you don't have a home in the world. She doesn't mean literal homelessness. For the emptiness is real. A process of emptying, impoverishment, and crippling of his potential actually took place. The integrity of the child was injured when all that was alive and spontaneous in him was cut off. In childhood, these patients have often had dreams in which they experience themselves as at least partly dead. Okay? A young woman, Lisa, reported on a recurrent dream. My younger siblings are standing on a bridge and throw a box into the river. I know that I am lying in it, dead, and yet I hear my heart beating. At this moment, I always wake. This dream combined her unconscious rage toward her younger siblings, for whom Lisa had always had to be a loving, caring mother to them, right? Because in this situation, the mother wasn't taking care, the parents were taking care of the other children, with quote unquote killing her own feelings, wishes, and demands. Okay, we see that, right? She's resenting her siblings because she wasn't getting her needs met by her parents. And that's often the case typically for the older siblings as well, because if they're already being neglected and then you have another child coming in on board, they're like, seriously? Like, I don't even get my needs met. Now we're adding another kid? Like, come on. A young man, Bob, dreamed, I see a green meadow on which there's a white coffin. I am afraid that my mother is in it, but I open the lid, and luckily it is not my mother, but me. Okay, this is vitally important. This is shame. You hear how he says, I open the lid, and luckily it's not my mother, it's me. Do we hear that? Do we hear how problematic that is? He would rather himself die in this dream than his mother die. This is the double bind. This is the double bind of attachment, which is I must experience and perceive my parents to be perfect no matter what. And if I don't do that, I must be the problem. If something's going wrong in the environment and I, because of evolution, think that my parent is perfect, it must be me. I must be unlovable. I must be bad. Boom, now we're in shame. Okay? So if Bob had been able as a child to express his disappointment with his mother, to experience his rage and anger, he could have stayed fully alive. But that would have led to the loss of his mother's love. Here we are again, the double bind of attachment loss. And that for a child can mean the same as death. So he quote unquote kills his anger and with it a part of himself in order to preserve the love of his mother. Okay, we'll do one more page. And then a young girl used to dream, I am lying on my bed. I am dead. My parents are talking and looking at me, but they don't realize that I am dead. The difficulties inherent in experiencing and developing one's own emotions lead to mutual dependency, which prevents individuation. Both parties have an interest in bond permanence, the attachment bond. The parents have found in their child's false self the confirmation that they were looking for, a substitute for their own missing security. The child, who has been unable to build up his own sense of security, is first consciously and then unconsciously dependent on his parents. He cannot rely on his own emotions, has not come to experience them through trial and error, has no sense of his own real needs, and is alienated from himself to the highest degree. What do we hear here? What are we hearing? Codependency. This is the birthplace of codependency, right? I cannot be my full self. I must cut off parts of myself. And when we cut off parts of ourselves, that's again when we start to get into addictions, self-sabotaging behaviors, maladaptive behaviors, right? Do you see this? Okay. Again, let me know if it's not clear. You can always ask questions. So, under these, he cannot rely on his own emotions, has not come to experience them through trial and error, has no sense of his own real needs, and is alienated from himself to the highest degree. Under these circumstances, he cannot separate from his parents. And even as an adult, he is still dependent on affirmation from his partner, from groups, and especially from his own children. The legacy of the parents is yet another generation condemned to hide from the true self while operating unconsciously under the influence of repressed memories. This woman's a genius. This is like 1968 or something. Okay. Unless the heir casts off his inheritance, quote unquote, by becoming fully conscious of his true past and thus of his true nature, loneliness in the parental home will necessarily be followed by an adulthood lived in emotional isolation. Thoughts, questions? Somatic Sadhana, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. UK if you're in Europe. Anything on that? We're gonna end here on social media, and then we will go and continue our practices in the membership. All right, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye. Okay.